In this recording, we'll discuss the liver and the gallbladder. Your liver is found in your right upper quadrant, just below your diaphragm. We have a couple of lobes to speak of. We've got a right lobe and a left lobe. These are separated by your falciform ligament. We also have another ligament on the inferior surface. This is your round ligament. This used to be your umbilical vein when you were a little fetus. Okay? We have two more lobes. We have the caudate and the quadrate lobe, which are kind of hard to say. These are on the posterior side, okay, of the liver's right lobe, specifically. Okay. We got a couple of other structures as well. Your porta hepatis. Okay. Your porta hepatis is just a little indentation on the posterior side. This is where your blood vessels go in and out, including the ones most familiar to us: hepatic artery, hepatic portal vein, and just regular old hepatic veins all enter and exit the liver at the porta hepatis. In addition to those blood vessels, you also have nerves, lymphatic vessels, and your common hepatic duct entering and exiting the porta hepatis as well. Okay. All right, so that was lots of words. We've got your right lobe, we've got your left lobe. Okay. We've got your falciform ligament separating them. You've got your round ligament. Don't forget your little gallbladder up under there. Okay. From the bottom, now we get to see the quadrate lobe and the caudate lobe here. Collectively in this area, this is our porta hepatis, and you can see our arteries and our veins, our lymph vessels, and our good old common bile duct. Okay, all kinds of good stuff, y'all. All kinds of good stuff. Now, let's talk about what the liver does now that we know what it looks like. Okay, your liver collectively is made of lobules. Okay. These lobules are composed of hepatocytes. Okay. So we take these hepatocytes, which are actually hexagon in shape, which is, I just think, really cool. Normally when we think of animal cells, we're like, oh, they're round-ish. No, y'all, these are hexagons. Look at this, y'all. This is a hexagon. There's no denying it. Okay. And we just basically stack these up. Okay. Stacked one on top of the other. There is a central vein in the middle. Okay, and this is how we create a lobule. We just stack, 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 and we've got the central vein in the middle. Now, because we do have 6 corners, remember this is a hexagon. Okay, at each of the 6 corners, we find what we call the portal triad. Okay, it's not going to shock you to learn that we've got 3 parts to the triad. These 3 parts are your hepatic arteriole, your portal venuole, and a small little bile duct. Okay, yeah, we've got an arteriole, a venuole, and a little bile duct. Yeah. The hepatic arterioles and venules, okay, or the hepatic arteriole, the portal venuole. Yeah. These drain into the leaky capillaries that run in between the hepatocytes. We call these hepatic sinusoids. Okay. You may or may not remember that sinusoidal capillaries are not continuous, right? They're really, really leaky, okay, which allows large substances to go in and out of the bloodstream. Okay, this allows us to do a good bit of exchange between the blood and the hepatocytes. Okay. The central veins, okay, remember in each hepatocyte we've got that central vein. All of those central veins are going to drain into your hepatic veins, which then empty into your inferior vena cava. Now, I'm about to blow your mind. You ready? So the veins, the blood goes one direction. Okay. The bile, okay, bile flows through the liver lobule in the opposite direction. Ooh, I told you, I warned you. Okay. From the hepatocytes into these tiny little ducts, they are called bile canaliculi. From there, they go into the bile ducts. Look, y'all. Here we go. Okay. We've got blood coming through the little arteriole and the little venule. Blood's going in this direction. Okay. We're doing lots of exchange. Okay. And eventually you'll see everybody with the blood merges with the central vein. At the same time, okay, notice the direction for the bile duct. We're going the other way. I know, we gotta be so complicated, y'all. I know. Okay, so as bile is moving through, it's gonna collect boop, into these little tiny bile ducts. All right, so again, this is our triad. This is our triad. Okay. So, your hepatic portal circulation. Okay. This allows us to drain deoxygenated blood. Okay. So, not a whole lot of oxygen, but it is full of nutrients. Okay. So, we are draining the deoxygenated blood, the nutrient-rich blood. It's coming from the digestive system, and we're going to filter it through the liver. This allows the liver to further process the nutrients before we send it to the heart for systemic circulation. Okay, so your hepatic portal system is going to drain blood from your lower esophagus all the way down to your superior anal canal. And we're going to also include the pancreas and the spleen. That's a lot of blood, y'all. Okay, a lot of blood. And remember, this is all deoxygenated blood. Now we also have to give the liver oxygenated blood, so we have right and left hepatic arteries as well. Okay. So what's the point of the hepatic portal vein, the hepatic portal circulation? We're taking nutrient-rich blood. Doesn't have a lot of oxygen, but it's full of nutrients. We're going to filter it through the liver. The liver is going to process those nutrients to make sure they're in a usable form before we send them to the heart for circulation. Okay, and here's just kind of an idea of how it's going to circulate. So we've made our way through the digestive tract to the villi within the small intestine. We get absorbed into the capillaries that will then merge eventually into your superior mesenteric vein. We'll work our way to the hepatic portal vein. We will move through the sinusoids out to the into the central vein. Everybody collects in the hepatic vein, which merges with the inferior vena cava, which takes deoxygenated blood, but nutrient-rich blood, to the right atrium. Okay. This is kind of what it looks like. Okay. We're taking things from the stomach, the spleen, the pancreas, the large, the small intestine, everybody. Deoxygenated but nutrient-rich. Sending it to the liver. We'll process it a little bit more, make sure everything's nice and usable. Take out anything that maybe we don't want. Okay, maybe some sort of toxin. Everything that ends up in the inferior vena cava, you know, is going to the heart for circulation. Okay. Now, what does the liver do? All kinds of good stuff. Okay, one thing it does is produce bile. Okay. We've mentioned bile a couple of times. What is it? It's a yellow-greenish liquid. We've got lots of components. No enzymes, but lots of other components. Those components include, but are not limited to, bile pigments, bile salts, and or phospholipids. Okay. These bile salts do help in lipid digestion. We got some cholesterol, triglycerides, electrolytes. We've got all kinds of good stuff. The bile salts specifically are actually derived from cholesterol, so it makes sense. We've also got some cholesterol in there. We've mentioned the function of bile previously. Helps with the emulsification of fat in the small intestine. It's going to help break it down into fatty acids and glycerols that we can then absorb as micelles into the lacteals. And we have also mentioned that secretin is going to stimulate the liver to secrete that bile. Okay? The bile will leave via the common hepatic duct, joins with the cystic duct to make the common bile duct, and everybody gets dumped into our favorite duodenum. Okay? What else does the liver do? All kinds of things, y'all. I'm telling you, your liver's giant and it is important. We're going to store glycogen. Okay? This is driven by insulin. Okay? In addition to the glycogen storage, which don't forget, glycogen's really just a bunch of glucoses that we have attached to each other to form big glycogen chains. We're also going to store fat-soluble vitamins here. We can take amino acids that have been absorbed from the digestive system. We can use them to produce plasma proteins like our favorite albumin. Okay? Don't forget that albumin is responsible for helping us maintain our blood osmotic pressure. Your liver helps with detoxification of certain substances, for example, ammonia, alcohol, drugs, and even lactic acid. Okay? Don't forget that we do create lactic acid. You could call it lactic acid fermentation or anaerobic respiration. We're going to do that if we are working out so hard that we are not able to suck in enough oxygen to continue with aerobic respiration. We switch over to the lactic acid instead. Okay? And our liver, last but not least, breaks down bilirubin, which is one of the main pigments of bile. It gets broken down into a waste product. One of the waste products is heme, which, you should be associating heme with red blood cells. All right. The globin and iron from the hemoglobin molecules that can also, remember, we can break down these red blood cells, get all these little parts back. Okay. The globin and the iron, we can recycle those, but the little bit of bilirubin, we're going to turn that into bile by the liver cells. And we can do we can do all kinds of stuff with it. The hepatocytes, okay, that are secreting the bilirubin into the bile, we're going to work with the bacteria in the large intestines. The bile gets turned into something called urobilinogen. Urobilinogen gets turned into stercobilinogen. Stercobilinogen is brown, which is why your feces are brown. Some of the bilinogen stuff remains in the blood, and it can get excreted by the kidneys. The urobilinogen specifically is yellow, which is why your urine is yellow. So you may or may not have ever wanted to know why your feces were brown and your urine was yellow, but now you know, and you are ready for Jeopardy! All right, things in your liver can also go wrong. We could suffer from hepatitis, which is just inflammation of the liver. There are lots of things that can ultimately cause hepatitis, like viral infections, okay, bacterial infections, parasites, drugs, alcohol, autoimmune disorders. Lots of things can actually cause hepatitis. Cirrhosis is a progressive and chronic inflammation due to chronic alcoholism or chronic hepatitis. So basically your liver turns into fatty and fibrous tissues. Basically we go from nice liver tissue into scar tissue. The blood flow through the liver will also become more obstructed, and it gets harder to filter the blood. Scar tissue does not work as well as liver tissue. Normal liver tissue does either. And then jaundice could result from the buildup of bilirubin. And we said the bilirubin, the urobilinogen specifically, is yellow. Okay, and so people that suffer from jaundice will experience a yellowing of their skin and their eyes. See? Yellowing of their eyes. This is normal liver, fatty liver, cirrhotic liver. So this doesn't work like this does. I don't think that's going to come as a shock to anybody. There are lots of different types of hepatitis. You can look through this very quickly. This is just an FYI, just in case you never knew. A lot of people have heard of hepatitis A and B, maybe even C, but look, there's a D and an E. All right, so again, just kind of for FYI. All right, last but not least, y'all, the gallbladder. All right, it's that little sac that sits underneath the liver. It receives bile from the common hepatic duct where it stores it, and it concentrates it by removing water, and when it is told to do so, it will release it. Okay, who is telling it to do stuff? That's going to be CCK. Okay, so remember, when we put fatty contents into the duodenum, we release CCK. This triggers the contraction of the smooth muscles in the gallbladder themselves. The gallbladder will kind of squeeze and contract, will release bile into the cystic duct. It moves through the hepatopancreatic ampulla into the duodenum to mix with the other pancreatic juices. Okay, here's your little gallbladder, y'all. Bile contains, don't forget, in addition to like all of the other things that we mentioned, We can also find calcium salts. We did already mention the cholesterol, so that should be a refresher. But both of these, okay, calcium and cholesterol, can precipitate. So basically come out of solution, and they turn into stones. We call them gallstones. If you like the science term biliary calculi, that's cool too. I just say gallstones. When your gallbladder contracts to eject the bile, these stones can get in the way. They can cause pain. They can even clog your cystic duct. Since your bile salts and the pigments can no longer enter into the duodenum, we just kind of have this buildup of bile. You may become jaundiced. This is a picture of a gallbladder that's full of those little stones. Okay, so if you can imagine when this contracts, if these little stones kind of get in the way in our tiny tube, then it becomes a lot harder to move the bile through the ducts like it's supposed to.